Met with my colleague from Illinois last week twice, Senator Durbin, who he and I have traveled to Africa, not to the Sudan, but to talk about what else could we put together of action items for as far as supporting of peacekeeping troops, for as far as reviewing other possible options of no-fly zones, looking at other sanctioning that we can do of individuals traveling in and out of Sudan or key individuals. And I would hope that we could start pulling together a list of these items that we could do together, like Congressman Payne and Wolf in particular in the past have been very successful at getting us pulled together around a series of items that we can do and should do, and then let's start hitting it. Every minute we waste, somebody else gets killed, and more people die, and more people are left in the carnage that has been caused by this government. And we're not powerless. There are things we can do. Even if the Khartoum government doesn't agree with the troops being in there, there are things we can do. And I hope we find the will and the gumption and the time, because that's generally what it is more than anything, is us just finding the time to get together to figure out what it is we want to do, because once we do, we can move it, and it can happen. And I pledge my own effort and time to do that, because each minute is somebody else getting killed in a place in a region of the world where it shouldn't happen, and it shouldn't happen on our watch, and it shouldn't happen on our dime. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'll yield myself 5 minutes for questions of the panel, but I'll yield the first minute to my friend, Congressman Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to the 4 witnesses who are testifying today. And I think the American people would be proud to see this, to see 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats sitting at this table, all in agreement about what's happening as far as genocide and people being killed in Darfur. And I'm very proud of all 4 of you. And I say to the senior senator from Kansas, we have many political differences, but I've told him before I'm very proud of the position he's taken on human rights violations. He's been a consistent supporter of trying to stop human rights violations and especially genocide in places around the world. And the same to Congressman Wolf, to Congresswoman Lee, and to Congressman Payne. Thank you very, very much for what you're doing here, and I want to support you.
Thank you. Let me first of all say to the 4 of you how proud I am to be a member of this institution, being able to see the 4 of you, the diversity, you know, East Coast, West Coast, middle of the country, and to see all of you come together on this issue of Darfur. I think it echoed the comments of my friend from Kansas. I say that sincerely, Congressman Moore, to see the 4 of you working together. I just know we can get this done. I have a question for Representative Barbara Lee. You know, it's fairly widely acknowledged that divestment and economic sanctions generally do not work as they are many times intended. Our embargo against Cuba and sanctions against Burma are 2 examples that come to mind. We can point to success against white rule in South Africa in the 1980s, but even in that instance, one byproduct was greater hardship for black South Africans. Why is the situation different? Why do you believe that divestment will work in Darfur? Congresswoman Lee?
Sure. First, thank you very much again for this hearing, Mr. Chairman. And I think divestment will work. It has worked. You cited examples where it hasn't worked, but it has worked throughout the world, really. When it came to South Africa, I think that is probably the best example of how it did work, and it's very similar to the strategies that we're mounting here. First states, I believe California was the state to divest of its pension fund holdings in South Africa. Then states followed the California model. Subsequent to that, the United States Congress imposed sanctions against South Africa. And this was a long-term process, but it did work. With regard to Sudan, first of all, there are many foreign-owned companies that are heavily invested because of the petrochemical and resource extraction industries in the Sudan. And many of these companies are considered the worst offenders, and we want to find out, first of all, we want to know who they are. I mean, I think, and what we have seen already with two companies, just with the bill being introduced, Siemens and ABB having said no more. They know that this is going to happen. I think genocide is taking place, which again is a big difference in terms of other divestment efforts. We have 450,000 people who have been killed, and we have major companies that need to be we need them listed, and the SEC is responsible for listing these companies. And so the first step under this bill is to just know who these companies are, first of all, and then make sure that they are not afforded federal contracting opportunities. And I think those two factors: one, that genocide is taking place, 450,000 people have been killed, and two, that there are companies that are in these two industries that need to be squeezed, because the Khartoum government is relying on these investments because of their industrial base. And I think that this is a strategy that will work.
Thank you. Let me just end with saying this. After I've been a member here for 14 years, my 15th year, and I have to say I'll never see Congressman Frank Wolf or Senator Brownback in the same way after listening and learning a lot more and preparing for this hearing about what you've done. That may be a shame on me and a shame on our lack of relationship, but I just thought I should share that with you. So if anything else, I think these hearings let like-minded people come together on the situations they might not otherwise. Yes, Congressman Payne?
Yes, just on the point, as Congresswoman Lee mentioned, you know, you need a number of tools when you come to a complicated situation like we have in Sudan, and no one tool is really going to work. That's why divestment, and it wasn't divestment alone, it was then the boycotts and the isolation from the Olympics in South Africa. It was a number of issues, and then it started internal debate with South Africans. They were isolated. They were an island unto itself. They couldn't participate in international organizations, still with the divestment going on. You know what investment does? Taiwan, Korea, people invested in them, and they became strong and robust. So therefore, the whole question of investment and divestment definitely has its place. And so if we can hold back investment to slow down and retard the economic growth and development, I think that it's very good. And the question about the poor people suffering, in South Africa, we asked South Africans, just like we've asked Sudanese, and they said they're suffering anyway, they're dying anyhow. And so to have a little more pain that indirectly falls on them, they're willing to suffer a little more, because if it means regime change or weakening the pariah government up in their capitals, whichever country it was, they support that. And so that's what I'd like to say.
I would like now to recognize my